First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here and the time you've spent here listening to our speakers and all of our topics. The good news is, as I'm always tasked with, I'm one of the last speakers. When you get to the funeral home, you're towards the end. So, but all joking aside, Wendy worked with me for a couple of years, and although I lost a really good employee, I'm so proud of her taking her expertise to palliative care and hospice, and so I still love you, Wendy. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. About 40 years ago, I decided to follow in the footsteps of my father and grandfather and great-grandfather in the funeral industry. Coming from Boulder, Colorado, my family's been owning mortuaries out there in the Boulder, Denver area since 1898. So that's what I chose to do 40 years ago, although it feels like just the other day. So in addition to my role as a funeral home manager, I came here to Reno 25 years ago to manage Walton's. And in addition to my day-to-day operations, I earned my specialty insurance agent license. That allows me to help people do their pre-planning, pre-funding. I'm sure some of you have probably heard that. Perhaps with this crowd, some of you have had a loved one die that's had a pre-arrangement. I always want to ask, is anybody familiar with pre-planning, a pre-need, anything like that? Have any of you lost someone that might have had their final wishes put in place? So if you haven't, I'm sorry, and if you have, I think you understand exactly how important that decision is. Talking about death with your family is never an easy thing, whether it's your spouse or your children, but it's not a hard thing to do. So most of us don't think of a pre-planning until we face that of our own mortality. We lose a spouse, we lose a parent, and we kind of think, gosh, it would have been a lot easier if I'd gotten that done ahead of time. That's where I come in with pre-arrangements. We sit down informally, just talk about your wishes, decide what you think your final plans might be, whether it's cremation or burial or possibly being repatriated back to the state of your birth. We handle all kinds of funeral arrangements. Walton's handles a lot of cases. We have 11 different offices throughout northern Nevada, including Gardnerville and Carson City, Reno and Sparks. I just happen to work at our main office downtown on 2nd Street. But doing pre-planning, again, it's not a scary thing to do. When I sit down with you, I hope I would make you feel comfortable about going through your wishes, answering questions, going through the costs that might be involved with doing that. And then eventually, perhaps you want to do the pre-funding. That's the pre-paying of your insurance policy or for your final wishes. Pre-planning is one of the few things we get to prepay in life and freeze the costs for the rest of the life. A lot of us have life insurance. A lot of us have tell me, well, Blake, I got funding already, I've got life insurance put aside, they can take care of the funeral arrangements then. So I can tell you, after 40 years in the business, it's hard as a funeral director to come to the family and perhaps there's a life insurance benefit, and I get to come there and take a portion of that, quite often a large portion depending on the amount of the policy. So funeral home pre-planning allows you to come in and just pick the specific items you want, the merchandise, the type of service you want, again, whether it's a cremation or a full burial. And go ahead and pre-fund those. You can write those into a policy, pay for them today. That cost will be frozen for the rest of your life. Prices are guaranteed never to change. So it's pretty amazing. I really consider it just the greatest thing you could do. I always say it's the greatest gift you could ever leave your family or your kids. I see it firsthand because the families that come in with their little packet with mom or dad's or grandma's pre-arrangements, there's a whole different arrangement process that takes place. They're all at ease. They just know all they have to do is honor their loved one's plan, and there's not going to be a financial transaction at the end of that arrangement. I think a lot of the questions that people have, a lot of the people that want to do that, they just ask things like, what if I move? What if I relocate? The beauty of a pre-arrangement, again, we have to write that through a third party. We happen to write our funeral plans with funeral director life insurance. So the money's not being held at Walton Funeral Home. So people say, what if you go out of business? What if we move? What if I die out of state on a vacation? All these types of questions. The beauty of the pre-arrangements, they're all portable, so we call them portability, and of course they're transferable too. So if you happen to move out of state, move out of town, that policy goes with you. It can be honored by any funeral home, and you're not stuck with Walton's, for instance. That money can be transferred to any funeral home. So those are the common questions I have. One other thing I want to talk about, Kyle mentioned earlier in our program today about wills and trusts. I'd say in my long time in the business, probably 80% of everybody that has a will or a trust never adds that final little topic. And if those of you that have trusts, I think I'd invite you to look at them. You're probably missing that last paragraph that talks about your final wishes. Oftentimes I find myself meeting with an executive of a person that passes away. There's no spouse, there's no children, perhaps there's no siblings, but they have a trustee or someone that's handling their will. Without that wording in there to take care of their final wishes or direct their final disposition, the funeral home cannot move on that. So please think about that when you're doing your trust or your wills. Make sure you appoint someone, maybe your trustee, perhaps a family member, to take care of your final wishes. And also, if you do a pre-arrangement, make sure you capture that and include that in your final state as well. Those are important things to do. So I know we're limited on space. I could go on forever talking about this industry, but I want to see if there's any questions that you might have that I can answer. Sir?
Or should I use your service, let's say for cremation, as opposed to so many of the other cremation services that are out there, specifically for cremation?
It's a great question. So it's a question I've gotten my whole life. There's a lot of mortuaries in town, a lot of cremation societies.
And I'm not talking about mortuaries, you know what I'm talking about? You know, I don't want to throw out any names, but I'm sure you know who I mean.
Well, I do, and
Like Neptune, for instance.
It's a great question. That's kind of where I was getting at. I kind of had to set the base, but
Okay, good.
so Walton's has our own crematories. We have our own crematories on site. In fact, where my facility is, not everybody has that opportunity. So I get a call every day from someone that's only focused on cost. They ask for my price. I give them a general price, and they say, "Oh my gosh, that's a lot more than the other person." So important questions are to do your homework. I have no problem with people shopping for the best price. Walton's offers cremation societies that have a lower cost for the cremation. The only difference is we have a little higher level of service for the survivors, if you will, at my facilities. So we have mortuaries and we have cremation societies. The difference is my office is open 7 days a week, where a cremation society may be Monday through Friday. That seems crazy, but the convenience of someone being able to come in on the weekend is important for a lot of people. The other thing I'd say, where's their crematories housed? And quite honestly, I would go visit their facilities. Again, not everybody's skilled at doing what they do. Anybody can do that, but at a time like this, you're entrusting a mortuary or a crematory with your loved one. You should be expecting the highest level of service. So I like to say that's where we might be different than everybody, but ma'am, do you have a question?
Yeah, can I make a comment and a question? One is, I talked to Reverend Shelley at the Buddhist Center, and I just want to compliment she said that when a Buddhist dies, that you all allow like the chanters and people to come in, during that time, which I thought was really cool to me,
Yeah. It's a great point. Shelley and her husband are both dear friends of mine, and I'm happy to say we typically take care of most of their congregation for a number of reasons. Number one, she knows things are going to be handled correctly. We own our own crematories. The Buddhist religion, like other religions, have their own mores, so they come to our facility. Shelley or her husband will do prayers. They'll have witness cremations. They actually attend the cremation, so that's important for us. We can do that because everything's right on site at my facility. So thank you for bringing that up.
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Have you ever explored offering human composting?
We do not. That's a question we've been asked for a while. There's only one facility I'm aware of. We've had a few people we've assisted in transferring there up to Oregon. That's the only company I know of that does that. I don't think there's any in Nevada.
There's one in Vegas.
Was there one in Vegas? Well, I know they do hydrolysis. I wasn't.
Yes.
So that's the water treatment as opposed to the composting. But yeah, it's a good question. So, anyone else? Well, I know that this topic's not always easy to talk about, and so I want you to know I would be glad to sit down with you informally after the meeting, like most of our speakers. I've got some little pre-arrangement, pre-planning programs. Probably not enough to go around with everybody, but great tips there on things to consider for pre-planning, getting your information down, talking about cremation, burial, how to write an obituary, things like that. So feel free to grab one of those. I'll have cards there, and like everybody else, I'll be around in case anybody has any questions. So thank you very much for your time.